Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the murder of Barbara Baekeland, or Barbara Daly, whichever one you most know her by, if you know of her. And this case is pretty, let's just say, grim. It's pretty sick what actually happens, and let's just get into the case. If you have any suggestions, let me know. I'll look into them for you. But yeah, let's get stuck in. Barbara was born Daly, so that is how we are going to begin her story. Barbara Daly was born on the 28th of September in 1922 in Boston in the US. Not too much is known about her early childhood, but in January of 1933, her father Frank sadly took his life. Barbara was actually the one that found him. He was in the garage and it was carbon monoxide poisoning, so you just can imagine what happened. But she was literally 11. She found her own father and she was 11 years old at the time. That must have been so horrific, so traumatizing, so scarring. And it's just not even worth imagining. Like, it's awful. She was so young and such a tragic thing happening. For her to find him is just awful. For it to happen in the first place is scarring enough, but for her to be the one that finds him is just so much worse. Now, he did apparently have life insurance, which obviously his family got. So when her mother got the money for this, and I do believe it was quite a lot of money, they actually ended up moving to New York and began living in the Delmonico Hotel. So again, they must have had a decent amount of money to be living in the hotel, surely. This hotel actually no longer exists. In 2001, it was bought by Trump, who turned it into Trump Park Avenue. Barbara, as she grew older and became an adult, she became this prominent socialite. It's like somebody that is very wealthy. They're always at like the top end parties and restaurants, and even restaurants that normally you can't get into, she would always be able to get into them. Things like that. She was just highly thought of, and she was like a stunning young woman at the time. She was actually one of New York's 10 most beautiful women, and from that she did receive a lot of modeling contracts, such as with Vogue, and she was very successful from those. In her real life though, like behind the scenes, Barbara was suffering with mental health issues. She did seek help for those. Her psychiatrist was called Foster Kennedy, but she did it at a private clinic. Everything was kept hush hush. She didn't want anyone to know because it would ruin her social status. You know, these things in them days it wasn't very well understood, and she believed it would be bad for her image, which it probably would have been at those times, and so she just wanted to keep it all secret. She didn't want it to get out because it would ruin her career, essentially, in her eyes. Despite her problems, she kept rising in her social status. She was often invited to these high society parties and would often be asked out by very wealthy men. She ended up going to this screen test in Hollywood with Dana Andrews. Now, Barbara really wanted to become this famous actress. Unfortunately, she didn't actually get cast in that role, although it wasn't this wasted journey because she made a friend out of it. Cornelia Dickey Baekeland, who was also a fellow aspiring actress. They met, they became really good friends from that, and they just became like fast friends. They were hanging out together, going for food, doing whatever. They just gelled straight away. Eventually, she introduced Barbara to her brother Brooks, who was actually a trainee pilot for the Royal Canadian Air Force. It seems like initially she wasn't really interested in Brooks. Okay, yes, she introduced him. She's not that interested in him, really, until she finds out something very important about his family. So their grandfather actually invented plastic. Yes, plastic. The family, of course, as you can imagine, was very, very wealthy. And when I say very, I mean very. Heck, it's plastic. They actually owned this plastic company, apparently called Baekeland. So anyway, they do end up together. Barbara ends up with Brooks, and she felt like she was essentially set for life. She had all of this money, she had the man, he had all this money, and, you know, she never had to work again, kind of thing. But from the start, their relationship wasn't good at all. And that was from the beginning too. Like, normally you get together and everything's like essentially like a honeymoon period. You're really happy to be with each other. You want to spend all the time together. It's just bliss in the beginning. Of course, there's some arguments, but not very many of them, because you're just getting to know each other, you start to really like each other, and all of that stuff comes later on. Like, you know, the arguments and things like that. Normally, it's really happy in the beginning, but they just weren't. It's like they didn't gel very well, I guess. Obviously, that's not always the case, you know, not everyone experiences the honeymoon period, but it happens quite a lot. Like, more often than not, I would say. They argued a lot. They fought a lot, and it just wasn't a good place to be in, you know? I believe that he wanted out of this toxicity, and he's gonna like break up with her, and then Barbara says, wait, you can't do that, I'm pregnant. So, because of the time that it was, and how frowned upon it was, pregnancy before marriage, they quickly went and got married in California. The thing was, though, was that she actually wasn't pregnant. She just didn't want him to leave her. She wanted to be set for life with him. She couldn't have him leave with all of his money. I mean, she'd have to work again. After their wedding, she was like, oh, by the way, not actually pregnant. As you can imagine, Brooks was very angry. He was very upset. The main reason he married her was because he was going to leave her. He married her because she said she was pregnant, and now she's saying that she's not. It led to this huge argument. I guess Barbara didn't really care at this point. She'd already lied to him about something that was huge. It changed their lives. It forced Brooke to marry her, but Barbara was now in there. Like, she was married. She had gone from Barbara Daly to Barbara Baekeland, and with that came the wealth. I'm not entirely sure why Brooks did stay with her after that huge lie. I don't know whether it was because, like, divorce was a huge no-no in them times, or he just didn't want it to look really bad after they'd only just got married, or I don't know. I don't know why he did, but he did. So the now married couple set up their lives in this luxury apartment in the upper side of East New York, where they would carry on with their high status socialite life. They would hold these extravagant parties for the friends and things like that. But over time, Barbara began to be known by her friends as being like really mean and nasty and having this very unstable personality. She'd sometimes have these rude outbursts to people, which would often be accompanied by severe bouts of depression. Things were kind of falling apart a bit. Barbara turned to drink, so she would drink a lot all the time. Their marriage was falling apart, seemingly not as happy as it seemed on the outside. So from people on the outside looking in, you know, they're a happy couple, everything's fine, but on the inside it's actually really not. They both began having affairs, many affairs on both sides. Barbara did actually end up getting pregnant with Brooks, and on the 28th of August in 1946, she gave birth to their son, who they called Anthony. Or Anthony, I'm not sure which. As often comes with being very rich, you know, they had many homes in many different countries. It would just be like a case of choosing where they wanted to stay. So say, I don't know, it's cold in Paris. They would go and stay in Italy or Spain or wherever it wasn't cold. So they just depends on seasonal or where they wanted to be. That is where they would go and live. They had like their main home in New York still, but would spend a lot of time traveling around Europe, splashing the cash about, continuing their love of entertaining people, going for lavish meals, going to all these events, things like that, just keeping up their socialite status. But along with all that, the affairs continued. They then started to spend a lot of time in Paris. Now, I did read that something happened in New York. I'm not entirely sure what. I think she got very drunk and possibly said some things. I don't really know. Maybe she embarrassed herself or something like that. Either way, they kind of wanted to stay away from New York. They went to Paris a lot and stayed there a lot to kind of try and start a new life. Nobody knew about the things that happened in New York in Paris. So that is why they went there and stayed there. In 1960, Brooks was having yet another affair, but this one kind of seemed different. It was with an English diplomat's daughter, and she was 15 years old. It wasn't illegal then. So yeah, he absolutely loves this teenager. He decides that he is gonna break off with his wife. He's gonna file for divorce, and because he loves this 15-year-old girl. When he told her this, Barbara was absolutely distraught. She was jealous, she was unstable, and so she tried to take her own life. It was as though she didn't really want to, though. I don't know the full ins and outs of it, but I do know that Brooks found her, you know, she was okay after that. And it's thought to be more, she did it more to try and keep him rather than to actually take her own life. from what I could gather. And as a result of that, if that was why she did it, it worked, because Brooks stopped his affair and he remained married to Barbara. And once again, Barbara got what she wanted and Brooks stayed. At this time, their relationship with their son wasn't really that good. It's not really spoken about often because there's not much information on it. Apparently, Anthony didn't have like this really good relationship with his mother at all. She wasn't maternal. She was more materialistic. So anything he wanted, she would buy. He had everything he could ever want or even didn't want, but when it came to actually having a mother, she wasn't there. So she was there in the materialistic way, but not the maternal way. When he reached the age of 18, he actually decided that he was going to go and travel by himself. So not really stay with his parents. I guess if you don't really have a relationship with them, why would you want to? So he would go off and stay in Paris somewhere, or Spain, or Italy, or whatever. He would just go off and do his own thing. By 1967, Anthony was staying in Italy. He was now 20 years old, and that was where he would meet a man called Jake Cooper, and they became really close friends. They hung out a lot. Over time, Jake actually introduced Anthony into hallucinogenic drugs. He got hooked, and the pair would even go out to Morocco and travel there together to go and get their fix of these drugs. Anthony and Jake eventually started having a romantic relationship with each other. They didn't tell anyone because, once again, in those times, frowned upon. Eventually though, Barbara, who was still living in Paris at the time, found out about this and she was livid. She pretty much said that she was going to go and drive down there, grab her son and bring him home because he couldn't be gay. She didn't want him to make the family look bad. Not my words, of course. Those are just all her. But that is what she thought. And I mean, it fits in with the times. That is what was thought of that, unfortunately, at the time. So that's what she does. She drives down there, she snatches up her son, she drives him back, and she really wasn't happy about him being gay. She kind of thought along the lines of, he just hasn't met the right girl yet. Like, if he had the right girl, he would certainly not be gay, kind of thing. But that's not how it works, obviously. She just thought that she could fix it. She could fix his sexuality. And she actually had a woman in mind, someone called Sylvia. So she kind of pushed this relationship on. She ended up moving Sylvia in with them. So you've got Barbara, you've got Brooks, you've got Anthony, and then you've got Sylvia. And Anthony, who's gay, but Barbara, who's pushing Sylvia on Anthony. None of it worked out because, let me tell you, Brooks ended up having an affair with Sylvia. So yeah, it didn't really work at all. It all got really messy. She brings in Sylvia to fix her son, not my words again. And then she ends up having an affair with her husband. I mean, come on, it's just a mess. In February of 1968, Brooks once again wanted out of their marriage. He was in love with Sylvia. He wanted to marry Sylvia. History was repeating itself again. Barbara tried to take her own life again. She obviously wasn't happy about all this. I mean, she did bring her into the household and then, you know, it kind of ended a marriage, but there we go. Brooks, this time though, was having none of it. It didn't stop him this time and he got his divorce and he did end up marrying Sylvia. All that didn't go too well for Barbara. And then Anthony's like, Mum, I'm gay. I like men. Well, she's not having any of that. She decides that sex workers are the answer, and so she brings them round to try and make him straight, I guess. I don't know where her thought pattern is. And it gets worse from there. Let me tell you that. For sure it does. At this point, she'd had many affairs with many different men who I assume thought that she was good in the bedroom department. And I am telling you this because it's alleged that in 1968, when all else failed to fix her son, Barbara figured that maybe she could fix him. She, after all, had had a lot of sex and men had told her that, I guess, she was good. And she figured that that would turn him straight. That's really messed up, right? Like, really messed up. It's just disgusting. Ew. From what I could find, Anthony was showing increasing signs of schizophrenia. He had this erratic behavior and he would become very paranoid, and his family and friends were very concerned for him. And this actually began when he was a young adult. Now, from what I could find, his father initially refused for him to actually be treated by a psychiatrist, and he was later diagnosed with schizophrenia. But his dad just, I guess, it was too bad on the image and he wouldn't let him be treated for it, which is sad. So all of this was basically saying that their life was chaos. The sexual abuse allegations from his own mother, along with these mental health issues that had been going untreated for years, it just wasn't good and it didn't lead anywhere good. By July of 1972, Anthony had actually tried to kill his mother. There's actually been conflicting reports on how he tried to kill his mother, but basically he didn't do it. Anthony was arrested for attempted murder, but his mother didn't want to press charges, and so that was that. He was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, but was soon released after that. He was apparently supposed to receive, outpatient sessions with a psychiatrist. And after receiving these, the doctor actually did warn Barbara on the 30th of October to tell her that he actually believed that Anthony was capable of murder. That was something that Barbara simply dismissed, even though Anthony had already tried to kill her once before. I don't really know why. Maybe she thought that, I don't know, he won't actually go through with it. But why was she wrong? So just 2 weeks after that warning, we're now on to the 17th of November in 1972. And actually, Anthony does murder Barbara. He was 25 years old at the time and she was 50. He goes into the kitchen, he goes and gets a kitchen knife, he comes up behind Barbara and he stabbed her. I believe it was only a couple of times. The first blow was near fatal, so she died pretty quickly. Police arrived at the scene. Now don't ask me how they found out, who called them. I do not know. I just know that they were there. But when they got there, they found Anthony was totally disconnected from everything. And he was actually just sat there ordering Chinese food after he'd just murdered his mother. So they arrest him. He confesses to everything. He doesn't try and deny it. He basically said that she was abusing him and he just couldn't take it any longer. So he's charged with Barbara's murder. He's institutionalized at Broadmoor Hospital until the 21st of July in 1980, when, now this is contradicted and we don't know which is which, but apparently a group of Anthony's friends had urged for his release, saying that he was abused and he didn't deserve to be in there. But then you got other articles that say that that actually isn't true and that he essentially got out because he was better. So after 8 years of being in there, at the age of 33, he got out. He flies straight to New York City, where he goes to stay with his grandmother, so Barbara's mother essentially. He can't stay with his father. His father wants nothing to do with him, I believe. And his grandmother was called Nene Daly, and she was 87 years old. He was there for less than a week before he attacked her. He was literally there for 6 days. On the 27th of July, he attacked her with a knife. Again, a kitchen knife, stabbing her 8 times. The vicious attack broke several of her bones, but she did actually manage to survive the attack, which I think is amazing. Like, she was 87. She was stabbed 8 times and she survived. Apparently, he attacked her because she didn't believe that her daughter abused him, like sexually or any other way. And she also didn't like the fact that he was gay, so he stabbed her. Anthony was once more arrested and he was charged with attempted murder and sent to prison. After 8 months of being there, Anthony was apparently awaiting to be released on bail. He was awaiting for this court hearing on the that was due on the 20th of March in 1981, but it never happened because there was a delay in his medical records getting sent over. This made him very depressed. He was taken back to his cell at 3:30 p.m. and when somebody returned to his cell at 4 p.m, so just half an hour later, they actually found him deceased. He had put a plastic bag over his head and taken his own life. It is worth noting that some people do actually believe that Anthony was murdered and in fact did not take his own life, although there is no evidence of that. So there was also a movie made out of all of this case called Savage Grace. Apparently it's a really good movie, so if any of you guys are interested, go and check that one out. Personally, I haven't watched it as of yet, but apparently it's supposed to be good. So yeah, if you want to look into it, go for it. This case was very disturbing, very tragic. It was awful all around, and I can't help but feel kind of bad for Anthony. And I do kind of feel bad for Barbara too. I kind of feel bad for both of them, even though Anthony was the murderer. Like, Barbara didn't have a good life. Okay, she didn't have a good life. She wasn't a very nice person. She also suffered from mental health issues, and I do feel bad for what actually happened to her. If she did, sexually abuse her own son, that is just despicable and disgusting. But also, Anthony suffered greatly as well. If that's true, he suffered the abuse. He suffered with mental health issues as well. Everything about his life was kind of frowned upon, like his sexuality, frowned upon. His mental health issues, frowned upon. And I guess in his mind, the only way out of everything was murder. Do I think that's right? Hell no. The answer is never murder, ever. But I don't know, I just kind of do feel bad for him. with mental health issues and stuff surrounding the cases, it's really, really difficult. And I'm not trying to justify what he did. Please don't think that, because no matter how bad your life is, that it never is justified by murdering someone ever in a million years. And normally I'm talking more about the victim at this point than the killer, but I find myself talking more about Anthony than Barbara. I don't know. They both did suffer. They both had mental health issues. They both did very, very wrong things. Anthony more so than her, because he actually murdered somebody. And attacking his grandma after being out for like 6 days. That was just, why would you do that? Obviously, he was not right. There's something not right about both of them. This case is just weird. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on it. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up. To all of the regulars, thank you so much. I appreciate you watching. Obviously, I love you guys and I wouldn't be here without you guys. To anybody that is new, please consider joining the pack and subscribing. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Barbara Daly Baekeland. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.